Hey everyone, and welcome. Every single day, businesses are forced to make massive bets on a future they can't see. But how do they do it? Well, today we're diving into forecasting, the amazing skill of making educated guesses about what's coming next, and how it's this incredible mix of creative art and cold, hard science.
So yeah, that's the big question, right? How does any company, whether it's a tiny startup or a global giant, try to peek around the corner and get ready for what's heading their way? That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Honestly, you can think of forecasting as a company's crystal ball. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a local coffee shop wondering how many pastries to bake for the morning rush or a massive corporation planning a billion-dollar factory. You have to try and predict the future.
And managers lean on these predictions for, well, pretty much everything. They use forecasts to decide how much stuff to make, how many people to hire or let go, what the financial goals should be, and even those huge, game-changing strategic decisions based on which way they think the economy is going to swing.
Okay, so let's start with what I like to call the art of forecasting. This is the side of things that's less about complicated math and way more about something we all have. Human experience, intuition, and just plain old gut feeling. The official term for this is judgmental forecasting, and it's what you turn to when you just don't have a lot of past data to work with. You've got to rely on the experts, on their intuition and their opinions to try and paint a picture of what's coming.
A super common way to do this is something we all do in our own lives. It's called the historical analogy. The logic is dead simple. If a situation feels familiar, you just assume the outcome is going to be pretty similar to what happened before.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that idea. We're searching for those rhymes in history to help us predict the future. But as we're about to see, sometimes the entire tune changes.
Okay, so check this out. This is a perfect cautionary tale from 1988. Oil prices were tanking. Now, historically, whenever that happened, OPEC would cut production, supply would shrink, and prices would shoot right back up. So that was the forecast. But it didn't happen. Even after they cut production, prices just kept on falling. Why? Because other market conditions were totally different. History rhymed, sure, but it was way off key.
And that story really shows the danger of just relying on one person's perspective or a simple historical parallel. So it begs the question, how can we make the art of forecasting a little more reliable?
Well, one really clever answer is something called the Delphi method. It's such a cool process. You get a whole panel of experts together, and this is the key, you poll them all anonymously. Then you share everyone's answers with no names attached, and you let the experts rethink their own forecasts based on what the group said. You do that a couple of times, and you end up with a much stronger consensus, and you avoid all that groupthink that can poison a normal meeting.
All right, now let's flip the coin over and talk about the science of forecasting. This is where we stop relying on gut feelings and we start digging into the data, looking for hard, undeniable patterns.
And the raw material for all this scientific forecasting is something called a time series. It sounds fancy, but it's really just a list of data points recorded in order over time. Like your company's weekly sales numbers for the past few years.
And buried inside all that data are clues, big clues about what's going to happen next. We're going to look for 3 of the most important patterns that forecasters are always hunting for.
First up, you've got the trend. This is the big picture, long-term direction of the data. Just look at this chart of energy consumption. Yeah, there are all these little bumps and wiggles, but the overall movement over many, many years is clearly heading up. That's the trend.
Next, we're looking for a seasonal effect. These are patterns that you see repeating over and over again at fixed times. This chart of gas use is a textbook example. You see the exact same peaks in the winter and dips in the summer year after year after year. That predictable rhythm, that's a seasonal effect.
And finally, there are cyclical effects. Now, these are also ups and downs, but they play out over much longer and much more irregular periods of time. We're talking several years. Think about the big economic booms and busts like the ones you can see in this chart of interest rates. It's not a yearly spike. It's a long, slow wave.
Okay, so great. We can spot these patterns. But how do we actually turn that knowledge into a real prediction? Well, for that, we need to open up the toolbox of the science side, forecasting models.
Let's look at a really common one you might have heard of, the moving average model. Its whole job isn't to make some wild prediction, but to cut through all the random noise and messy fluctuations in your data so you can see the real direction things are heading.
And the way it works is just beautifully simple. It literally just takes the average of the last few data points, like, say, the last 3 weeks of sales data. By doing that, it smooths out any weird random spikes or dips, and what you're left with is a much clearer picture of the actual trend. It's so simple, but it's an incredibly powerful tool for short-term forecasts.
So we have the art of human judgment on one hand, and the science of statistical models on the other. And all of this brings us to what is maybe the most important question of all.
Which one wins? Who do you bet on? The seasoned expert with decades of experience and a powerful gut feeling, or the cold, hard numbers that have been crunched by a computer model?
And the answer, maybe surprisingly, is neither, or rather both. The absolute best, most reliable forecasts almost always combine the two. You start with the science, right? The model gives you a data-driven baseline. It might say, hey, based on historical trends, sales should go up 5%. But then the art comes in. A human expert looks at that number and says, yeah, okay, but the model doesn't know our biggest competitors launching a huge new product next quarter. And so they use their judgment to adjust that forecast down to, say, 2%. You're blending the science with real-world art.
And that gets us to the most crucial takeaway here. Forecasting is never about being perfectly right. It's impossible. Remember that 1988 oil crisis? The real goal is just to reduce your uncertainty. It's about being a little less wrong every single time.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive question for the future. As AI gets scarily good at spotting patterns in data, patterns no human could ever hope to see, what happens to our role? What part is left for human judgment, for that gut feeling, in a world that's getting more and more dominated by the science?